Hello, what's up? Happy Wednesday or whatever day it is that you're watching this. Welcome to the Back of the Pack channel. Today we have Kelly Wright with us. She is a travel nurse and a nutrition coach, and a badass adventurer. And today she is going to share with us her two most recent summer adventures, one of which was through hiking the Enchantments in the North Cascades. And then the other one was backpacking the Timberline Trail, which is in Oregon and circumnavigates Mount Hood. So super stoked to chat with you, Kelly. I will go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
Hi, excited to be here. Like Laura said, I'm an ER travel nurse currently in Portland. Also spent some time in San Francisco, originally Reno, Tahoe. So I've done a lot of stuff around there and in the Sierras. I have my own little nutrition coaching business. So if anyone's looking for some guidance there, at kellywright.co for that. But I'll also just be hanging around the Back of the Pack channel, and around social media. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about these two Pacific Northwest adventures.
Awesome. Very, very excited to hear about these. So these are two trips. So for those of you who don't know me, I grew up in Colorado and then I lived in the Northwest for about 12 years. And then I just recently moved back to Colorado. So I'm very familiar with these two trips, but I haven't done them. And they are both like still on my list. At some point, I will venture back to the Northwest to check them off. So selfishly, I'm very excited to hear about these adventures. So let's just start with, we'll kind of start with the Enchantments, the through hike there. So again, this is one that's in the North Cascades. I think it's 20 miles, right? Um, and yeah, so maybe just share like what inspired this? Like what made you wake up one day and say, I think I'm gonna go hike 20 miles through the Cascade Mountains?
So it's closer to 22.
Perfect.
And it had been on my list, like whenever I'm gonna move somewhere, whenever I move somewhere, like I start like a running note of like hikes and things to do, and it was on my list. And then actually a girlfriend who lives in Seattle told me that she and another friend of hers like already had like planned a weekend and they were gonna do it, and I was welcome to come, and I already had that weekend off, so I was like, yep, like sign me up. um so yeah, so I did kind of just like tag along with them. But planning wise, you can through hike it without a permit. If you plan on spending the night and getting like going backpacking, you do have to get a permit, which I believe those all open in like February, and run out super quick. Like you have to apply for the lottery.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's
Yeah.
lottery based.
I've applied multiple years and I've been denied, and I don't understand how that lottery works because I have friends who they'll like get it every year or like first time they get it, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I got Mount Whitney my first summer, like no, and like I know people have applied like 9 times, and I was like, "Ooh."
I have no idea, no
Yeah.
idea how that works.
Um, but honestly, after doing it, I don't even know that I would want to do it backpacking. So for anyone interested, like just through hike it.
Okay. Okay.
Um, but so, it's a point to point hike, 22 plus miles. The elevation gain is escaping me. It's not as much as Mount Whitney. I think it's closer to like 4 or 5 for total elevation gain. But this is one of those where you really need either a shuttle or you need someone to like plan to come get you to then take you back to your car, or like do what we did and we had 2 cars with our group.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the girls and I met in Leavenworth the day before. They drove from Seattle. I drove from Portland. We all had a really nice big dinner, uh, carb loading. Um, got all of our stuff together, which we can kind of like talk about like food and whatnot.
Mhm.
and we left at like 2:30 in the morning. Took about 25 to 30 minutes to get like to the final destination to drop off the first car and then hop back in the second car to get to the entry point.
Mhm.
And we started the hike like right at 3 a.m.
Cool.
So yeah.
So so it's my understanding from this hike that yeah, the goal is like start super early before the sun rises to get up and over Asgard Pass, which is like where the majority of the elevation comes from.
Yes.
So what was that like? I just heard like horror stories from Asgard. Like it's just
So and
brutal.
I did too. And the girls I was with had been like training, like
Hmm.
take like the way I trained for Whitney. Like I was doing box step ups like 3 times a week, weighted, and they were kind of doing something similar. And maybe I was just like really confident, but I just didn't do that.
Hmm.
And I didn't think Asgard Pass was that bad.
Okay. Okay.
Um, it did take me. So like by the time we get from like the entry point to Kolchak Lake, I think is about like 6 or 7 miles, I want to say. Absolutely stunning, like teal water. I was blown away. And then the goal for most people to kind of like maintain your time for the rest of the day is to get up Asgard Pass in like 2 hours.
Hmm.
I think is about kind of like the upper limit.
Okay.
Um, so it's, I want to say a little over 2,000 feet of elevation gain in less than a mile. So you are basically climbing rocks and like scrambling. Like I did
Hmm.
actually see some people wearing helmets, but for the most part, people were just like scrambling and like you can kind of like sidestep and like get a little bit of like hiking in.
Hmm.
Um, but I kind of like that stuff because when you're climbing, like then you get to use your arms and like your whole body and you're not just like trudging along hiking. Uh,
Hmm.
Not everyone felt the same, but I like I kind of liked it. And you turn around and like first like Kolchak Lake is like big and then you get higher and it just gets smaller and smaller and you can see more and I just it was just so beautiful and like it's just so cool to see like oh you're gonna go up this pass and then you're halfway up the pass and you're like oh like I did it and it takes
Hmm.
I think it took me like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. And I mean, you know, you maybe weren't doing like step ups and stuff to train, but like you are a very like athletically trained person. Like I don't want to
yeah,
like put that like you can't just like go out
like,
and do
no
this
no
and do
no
it.
like
Like
you can't
you
this is
have
not
been like weight training and like, you know, you're a healthy athletic human.
yeah
Even
I
if you
think
weren't doing like box step ups or whatever.
yeah the training for Whitney was like that because Whitney is known for those what do they call it the like 100 stairs or whatever.
Hmm.
Like there's a piece of Mount Whitney where you are kind of just like stepping
Hmm.
staircase for like miles. But this was really more of like scrambling.
Yeah, yeah. Um, okay, so you get up and over Asgard and then what?
So you get to the top of Asgard and then you eat.
Yeah, yeah.
I
A
think
while. Yeah, you've been taxing yourself pretty hard for
I finished off like a huge thing of like gummy bears.
perfect.
And the top of Asgard was definitely like my favorite part of the whole thing. Just like alpine lakes, still some snow up there. And just like quite a few. I want to say like at least five. If anyone has ever been to Desolation in Tahoe, it reminded me a lot of like Lake Aloha and that side of South Lake. It just kind of looked like the moon. Um, so yeah, we just kind of explored all those lakes. We filtered our water. That's another thing you can't really expect to bring enough water for 22 miles, so you have to bring a filter.
Hmm.
Um, so we took a little break, filtered, ate, and then it's kind of like you just got to keep going. Hikes like this,
Hmm.
I want to say you can stop and enjoy the scenery, but if you're trying to make it back, in a reasonable-ish amount of time. You just got to keep going.
Yeah.
But the top with all those lakes was definitely like my favorite part.
Yeah. The view up there. Yeah. I recently did kind of, it would be like a version of that. So the North Cascades has the Enchantments, and then the other big range in Washington is the Olympics.
Mhm.
And they have what's called the High Divide and Seven Lakes Basin Loop. And I did that a couple weeks ago, and that was 20 miles, 5,000 feet of gain, and very similar, like just kind of a steady. I mean, it's not like as you're not climbing up and over Asgard Pass. Like it's more of a steady climb up. You take like 6 miles or so to get up to the top, and then yeah, you get up and then you're just looking over this like basin of alpine lakes, and like you said, it very much like looks like you're on the moon. It's super super rad. And then just a slog down. We stopped at one of the lakes and like had lunch, and I swam for a good like probably 20 minutes, um and then yeah, it's just then you just start like the trek out. um
I haven't heard of that one. I'm gonna High Divide Seven Lakes Basin.
yeah, add it to your list while you're in the Northwest. It's a fun one, and similarly when I did it, that's a lottery one too if you want to backpack it. You have to, or I guess it's not a lottery, but you do have to get a permit, and they're mostly gone right away. I think they open up like April 15th. And they're pretty much gone like right away. So similar, like I was like, well, I really want to do this like before I, completely say bye to the Northwest. So I'm just gonna do it in a day.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, we're
yeah.
nurses. That's like how it works, right? Like, oh, I have a job, I got to do it.
Yeah, we literally, so I did it with two of my ER nurse friends, and we left the trailhead at like 7:30 or something, and we're like, all right, like let's see if we can make it back to the car before day shift ends. um,
Funny.
a long day out. So yeah, that said, like one of the things I remember about that hike was like the last like 5 miles, I was just like, I am done. Like felt physically okay, but mentally I was just like, give me someone's gonna come in. Mentally I was just like, give me a burger and a milkshake. Like I
Yeah.
am toast. I remember one time I said to my buddy Dre, like, I want to stop and like drink and eat, but like I also don't because I just want to like keep going.
Yeah.
Did you feel like that on the Enchantments?
Yeah. And so I was with, like, I knew one of the girls, and then she and her friend are the ones who had planned it.
Mm-hmm.
Other girl had brought one of her friends. And kind of what ended up happening was that the girl that was brought by the friend, so like she and I were the two ones who like tagged on. We were more of the same pace.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, and like, this can go at your own pace. Like that's like the thing here, right? Like back of the
Mm-hmm.
pack, front of the pack, middle of the pack, go at your own pace. And ultimately what we found was that we were doing a lot of waiting. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't there's nothing wrong with that. We don't mind doing that, but we were like, our feet are gonna hurt the longer we have to like be in these shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like pretty a little bit further ahead than them. And so at one point we met up with them, we waited for them, and we all kind of like had lunch together, and we're like, hey guys, like we're just gonna go. Like we're gonna go at our own pace. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is also a fitness thing for me. So I also want to see like what I'm capable of and how fast I can go.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, yep, go. Like, we're gonna go at our own pace. We'll see you at the car. It's like peace. And kind of for that, like same reason, like my shoes were not good. And like I just wanted to be out of them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I could not do this like go and then wait and then go and then wait, just like be with them.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like, gosh, like the first half of the hike, incredible. Like Asgard Pass, all those lakes, and then after the lakes, you start going down, and it is a lot of kind of like downhill scrambling at that point. which I kind of liked, and I'm kind of thinking it's maybe because I'm so short that like it was easy for me to like jump and like navigate my legs around things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with, like a lot of like downhill scrambling. And just like beautiful flat like meadow and valley, and we saw goats and like more lakes to jump into. We didn't jump into them until the end. But I would actually say that like the last like 9 miles were like very unimpressive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Which if you
it all.
read, yeah, if you read like all trails reviews, a lot of people are like, God, it was like great, it was so cool. And then you're just kind of like bored. Like
Mm-hmm.
then you're just hiking. Like and
Yeah.
hiking is great. But when you've already hiked for 11 miles and you're like, wow, I have 9 more. And
Yeah.
it's just like a closed in forest.
Yeah. 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 That's exactly how the high divide was. Like it was like the entire way going up was epic. And then being in the basin, and then like you kind of like traverse like the high divide, like you kind of like traverse this like ridge line for a while. And it's just like every corner I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then
Yeah.
you start dropping down, it's like, well,
Forest.
cool, it's just another forest. And I
And
have like
like it all looks the
8
same.
miles of this, and I've
Yeah. Like
already hiked
800.
12.
Yeah.
I just want a burger and a beer right now.
Yeah. So she and I were just like on the same page. She was like, let's just like, we're gonna power through.
Yeah.
Like we did
Yeah.
stop. We actually did take a swim in one of the very last lakes, and that felt really good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I have
those,
a rule that you always have to jump in an alpine lake, even if you don't want to, like it's always worth it.
yeah, oh yeah, it felt very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, those last 2 miles, I was like, all right, I'm like over it.
So you get to the bottom, you wait for your friends, you go back, you get the other car.
So we had like kind of when we had that discussion, we were like, why don't we grab your keys? Because it was one of their cars that was at the end point.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and we were like, and that way when we're done, we can just go get your car and
Yeah.
save us all like 40 minutes. So we
Yeah.
finished, we went and got the car, brought it back to the starting point, and by that time we really only had to wait another like 20-ish minutes. So we just laid down in the back of my truck and put our feet up and ate the rest of our snacks. Because we're like, screw it, may as well just like finish what we didn't eat.
Yep.
And then they got there, and then it was burger, beer, and ice cream time.
Perfect. Did you go to the Rhine House?
We went to Kolchak's, like farm
Okay.
grill or something, and it was maybe the best burger I've ever had.
That's
I would
awesome.
highly recommend. We also had ice cream from Whistle Punk, so
Very
also put that on your list.
cool.
Um, yeah, and then we were like all like in bed by 10, just like
Right.
absolutely smashed.
Just done. Yeah.
Yeah. And then a
Um,
gas breakfast the next day.
yeah. Yeah. And then you're like hungry for like 4 days later. I feel like I mean, I try really well to like snack all of the time,
Mm.
while I'm out doing stuff like that. And, I know the importance of it. And I try to like look at, carbs per hour and stuff like that. But I just feel like if you just can't, like, you just,
Let me actually pull it up. So, like, I mean, I'm a nutrition nerd and I'm a data freak, so I like actually, and I'm using macro factor now, which like you actually really do have to be on point with like accuracy for it to work. But I just like the science behind it. Like, okay, like I felt recovered with this many calories because like I know for Mount Whitney I didn't eat enough.
Mhm.
Um, but let me see what day we did this because I just thought it was like so fascinating. Like the day of the hike, I had planned on like 3,000 calories, like from start to finish. And then with dinner and my IPA and my burger and my fries and my ice cream, it came out to like 4,500.
Yeah.
And
Which
then
is probably like appropriate. I mean, more than
yeah,
it.
I mean, I'm 5 feet tall, and I woke up like I was sore, but I wasn't like as sore as I really thought I would be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the next day I ate 3,000. And I remember like going to bed and I was like, wow, like I'm really full. Like I'm not going to be hungry at all tomorrow. And I remember waking up and being like, oh no, like
Oh,
I
we're
need
still eating.
still eating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the same, like the next couple days, same thing, like all about like 2,500 calories.
Yeah. Yeah. Those things are taxing. Super important to like refuel.
Yeah.
Um, so other than food, like what did you bring in your pack for that? Like obviously you need a water filter. Like what else did you kind of like, would you recommend someone who wants to do this?
Yeah. So I had for backpacking, I have a platypus, the gravity filter. So for this, to keep everything in the same like compatibility, I got the platypus like squeeze filter.
Okay.
So you just like fill up the little bag and then squeeze it into your water.
Mhm.
I had a first aid kit. I brought extra socks. I had like a long sleeve shirt, and then I had a jacket, which like I didn't need the jacket at all, even in like the early morning. Like once
Mhm.
you're moving, you just don't need it.
Yeah.
I did bring hiking poles, never used them. I would say if you're doing it earlier in the season, there's going to be way more snow.
Mhm.
You might need it, but we had like one patch and like
Mhm.
it was fine to just step over. Um, Bug spray, but like I feel like we didn't even really need that. Sunscreen. Um, yeah, I'm like a very like simple, like a lot of people bring like the moleskin and the tape and like they bring a lot and I'm like food, water, emergency stuff, element or elementy, however you say it, whatever people decide on. Um,
Electrolytes of some
yeah, I
sort.
brought electrolytes, like I brought a lot of food,
Yeah.
mostly gummy bears
Yep.
and protein bars.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's pretty similar to what I packed for High Divide. Like I had a puffy coat, just in like the base of my bag that I just kind of, that's always there. Didn't need it, didn't use it, but it's one of those things that like if
You want
shit
to
hits
have a
the
jacket.
fan, like you want to have a puffy coat, and they're so light these days and so packable that they're just worth having. So yeah, I think I brought that and like two pairs of socks and first aid kit. I use a life straw on that trail, which like I don't know, it was not like it's super handy and like quick, but I think some of the other filters are a little bit better.
The girl that I was mostly hiking with had a life straw, and I think in hindsight, for these like long through hikes, that's like just so much more convenient. Because for me to
Yeah,
stop and like fill up my bag and then squeeze it, like did
yeah,
take time versus she just like filled up her water and like we went because it was
yeah.
compatible with her like big thick
Oh,
thing.
cool.
But then she's carrying like two of these heavy things, you know. It's like
Yeah,
choose your
yeah.
back.
I brought two Nalgene's with me, which I love Nalgene's, like the old trusty, like light plastic. So I had one, I mean, initially one with electrolytes and one without. And I pretty much finished both by the time we're at the top.
Yeah.
And then I just filled them up with like snow and stream water and used the life straw. Um, but yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Same, like very, and then yeah, like half my pack was food,
Yeah.
which I did not eat all of.
Yeah.
I actually got, I think, I mean, I definitely didn't eat enough because I got like nauseous on the way home.
Oh,
I had to pull over and I had to like dry puke um outside the car for a little bit. And then I had a milkshake and French fries. But
yeah.
um okay, so gear, um what was your favorite part? I guess we kind of covered that, but
I think those lakes at the top. And then
yeah.
there's another section that's like a meadow and it just kind of looks like a magical fairyland. Like
Mhm.
I don't really know how else to explain it except that it's like this grassy meadow. There were some goats over here, the beautiful mountains over here. Like there's like little streams everywhere and it just was
Mhm.
like it felt very much out of like the Wizard of Oz or something. I remember stopping and being like, where, like, because all of a sudden it's different. Like first you're at the top of the pass and there's like, it's like the moon, and then you climb down and then it's this beautiful green meadow. And I just remember like stopping and being like, wow, like cool. Like all
Yeah.
so different. And then, you know, you go another mile and it's like completely different scenery.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What's one main piece of advice that you would give to someone who's looking to through hike the Enchantments?
Start early and just watch your timing.
Mhm.
I think that if you kind of want to be done within like a reasonable-ish amount of time to be able to enjoy your evening and like relax, like just watching like how long it's taking you.
Mhm.
And preparation wise, like getting used to more scrambling.
Mhm.
I think that just hiking and like going on hikes with a lot of elevation is obviously going to be beneficial for your endurance and your ability to just finish 22 miles. But hiking on a trail is a lot different than like climbing around rocks or climbing down rocks. And I think that's kind of where a lot of people like, they just weren't prepared. They thought it was just like a trail when it was in fact like
Mhm.
after you get Asgard Pass and you're heading down, there's still just like a lot of navigating rock,
Mhm.
not just walking downhill.
Okay. So for reference, like how long did it, I mean, I know like, including breaks and everything, because you have to, like roughly how long did it take you?
I think it took us like 15 hours.
Okay.
It took the other two closer to like 16 and a half.
Okay. So yeah, plan for a very long day.
Yeah. And I kind of, I think I, like we had talked about it. I think if we hadn't been doing the like waiting and then
Hmm.
going and then waiting, like I probably could have done it like closer to like 14.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It is
Okay.
what it is.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good to know. I think when I did High Divide, I think it was around 13 hours. But like I had it on my Garmin the whole time and it was only like 10 hours of moving. It was just that we were like farting around, like, oh, like let's look at this, let's look at this, like let's
Yeah.
jump in the lake and swim for half an hour. So um yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I try and say like a half an hour
Mhm.
per mile. So, obviously like the enchantments are a little bit more than that, especially, counting Asgard and stuff like that. So I think that that's just like something for people to keep in mind, that like half an hour per mile is a good estimate, but when you add in elevation and scree fields and stuff like that, it's gonna go way up.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Cool. So let's transition into the Timberline Trail, which you did, I think it was 2 weeks after the Enchantments.
Um, yes.
Okay.
Maybe even sooner. Let me look at my calendar.
I remember I was like, whoa, damn, all right. Super quick after.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so 2 weeks after you do the enchantments, you decide to take on the Timberline Trail, which is the trail that wraps around the base of Mount Hood. Um, what inspired that?
Well, I had 3 days off. So for all the nurses
Why
out
not go
there,
hiking?
they must be filled, especially with like the season coming to an end. And I just did not get enough backpacking in. So I was pretty much like looking at trails on all trails, like trying to figure out where I could get permits. Like you were helping me. And then I was like, screw it. Like I'm just gonna do the Timberline Trail. Like most people do it in 4 days. I don't have that option. I know what I'm capable of. I was like, I'm just gonna do it. You don't need a permit, which we can go into, but like I was like, all right, like that's it.
Yep.
And then the research started and then the anxiety started and get in. Yeah, it was like I don't need a permit. It's an hour and a half outside of Portland. It's one of those quintessential things that you must do when you live here. So I was like, well, this is my shot. I'm gonna do it.
Awesome. I love it. I'm here for that energy. Um, so so you were a little anxious beforehand. I know that. We had chatted a little bit beforehand. I mean, anxiety nerves before anything like this is super normal. I even got them before that big hike that I did. Like, oh my God, like, can I even do this? So I think that's super normal. And I think I think it's important to like acknowledge that like those feelings are normal. And I think if we didn't have those, like you would be like a psychopath or someone who's frankly going to like end up getting themselves in trouble.
Yeah.
Because having that healthy level of anxiety makes us like think through those safety factors and make sure we're prepared and make sure that like this is something that we're capable of. So what were you anxious about?
So I mean, I was going by myself and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not afraid anymore to do that. That can be like a whole nother conversation, but like I have all my gear. I do know what I'm doing. So I wasn't scared about anything like that. It wasn't until I started reading about the trail and hearing about river crossings and some like pretty dicey ones that I was like, oh, like this is actually like people have like died doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, this is like actually like legitimately kind of unsafe to do alone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's 41.4 miles. For me, it was a little shorter because there is some damage from a storm. So the detour actually made the whole trip a little bit shorter. So I think I did closer to 40, which I wasn't nervous about that. Except then when you start to plan, like, oh, river crossings, you need to get to them as soon as you can because the river is less intense earlier in the day because there's less stuff melting.
Mm-hmm.
So then you really like you have to get to your destination. Like
Mm-hmm.
whatever campsite I determined was going to be night one or night two, in order for me to like safely cross the rivers as soon as possible, like you have to get to them. Like you have
Mm-hmm.
to hike fast. I had to start early. So yeah, like all those few days of like preparing, it was mostly that I couldn't cross the river because again, like I'm only 5 feet tall. Like, and the people writing these reviews, they're like, "Well, I'm like 5'9" and it was fine. Like it was up to my like knee." And I'm like, "Cool, well, that would be like up to my hip. Like that could sweep me away." Um, so yeah, that was like it wasn't the length of the trail, it wasn't the difficulty of the hike. It was, am I gonna like get swept away and like die in this river?
Yeah, valid concern.
Yeah.
Um, so what were the river crossings like?
So they were not that bad. I okay, so I did it in 2 nights and 3 days, and I had planned the first day to be about 15 miles, which was ambitious for me. But I knew I could do it because I've done it before. So I didn't get to the first river crossing until about 3 p.m. And I believe that one was Elliott. So
Mm-hmm.
I also like I went counterclockwise, which we can also like talk about. There's like various approaches. You can go counterclockwise or you go clockwise, and it really just where you camp either direction to hit the river crossings. Like that's how you determine that. But so I hit Elliott at about 3, and I had talked to someone who had done it dry. So he rock hopped and was fine. But then I had talked to another guy who did it wet, and he said it was really scary. So I was like, cool. These are like very different reports. Getting awesome.
Yeah.
Um, but I got to it and I had done a lot of research about river crossings and like what to look for and how to approach it and if you're going to do it wet and dry and like what to do. And so I was obviously looking at first for like a dry approach. um the guy One guy had just done it and he was like trying to point where he did it, and I was like, well, I physically cannot reach, like my legs are not that long. So I spent about like 10 minutes like analyzing, kind of walking up and down stream, and people put like rocks,
Mm-hmm.
Karen,
Mm-hmm.
and I like saw a spot where they had put them on both sides. And so I just decided, and they do that to indicate like this was a good approach. So I did it wet. I knew that my campsite was only going to be like another mile. So I
Mhm.
like left my shoes on. A lot of people will bring a second pair of shoes to do this.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I did it wet and it was a little scary. Because the water was flowing pretty good and it came up to like my mid thigh. Um, but you just go slow and like, you know, nail your hiking poles into the riverbed and step by
Mhm.
step. And by the time I was done, I was like, oh, well, shit, that wasn't so bad.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, similar, similar to climbing, you always want three points of contact. So making sure that, you're using trekking poles to kind of give yourself a little bit of stability there and making sure you're always like, have a solid
Mm,
contact and you're not just like on the tippy point of a rock or whatever and your pole's going to slide away. Um, undoing your hip pack or your hip belt and things
yes.
like that so that you can let go of your pack so it doesn't take you down
Yes.
with you in the event that you do float away.
Yeah, float away. Yeah. So
Um,
and that was all stuff I had learned online, facing the water. And then also I think like one guy said to almost kind of go at an angle, like forward. So I kind of
mhm.
tried to do that.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad, and that was the scarier of the two. So once I did that, I was like, yeah, cool. Like I'm done. Like I'm glad I didn't back out because like it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
hmm Yeah. And you also went like a little bit later in the season.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Things to consider again, like all the safety factors of seasonality and things like height, like you say, like, you're looking at reviews and some people are saying it's not that bad, it's only up to my knee or whatever. And it's like, well, how tall are you? Because, the knee on a 6'2" guy is very different than on a, 5'2" woman. So, um, just extra considerations. So what was your favorite part of that trail?
Gosh, that trail is something special. I know Mount Hood is like just loved on by Portland as it should be, but like getting to see the whole thing because every side of it was a little bit different.
Mhm.
So, like the south was kind of dry and more like granite, but then some sand, and then you turn, the corner, and there were these like chunks of like dead forest, or I think from a fire. Um,
Mhm.
but then with like wildflowers popping through. Uh,
Mhm.
and I think those were like kind of my favorite because it was just like kind of eerie, like the dead white and then like pink flowers. And, um,
Mhm.
I went late in the season, but it was the perfect time because there wasn't a lot of snow and the wildflowers were still out of control.
Mhm. That's
Um,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
and it was
always
just,
really cool seeing like the new beautiful life of wildflowers like amongst like dead burned.
but I think like, yeah, my favorite thing was just like every piece of it was just so different. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't the same forest all around the mountains. So, and
Yeah.
the whole time, like, the crags and the faces of the mountain are like just looking up at you,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all
Pretty
times. So it's just
special.
like incredible views.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it always just kind of strikes me just from like I used to ski at Meadows and then you'd ski at Meadows, then you go over Timberline and it's like, oh, it's a completely different mountain over here. Or, the Cloud Cap area, like it's just
Yeah.
there's so many, it's such a diverse for being like one cone, like it's just yeah, there's so many different zones.
Yeah. That
Um
was kind of my favorite of just like, wow, like I'm on a whole nother backpacking trip. Like it
yeah,
just, yeah.
that's awesome. What was your least favorite part?
Um, it is like pretty heavily like populated and like a lot of it's on the PCT. So there were a good amount of people. Um, in some of the camping spots, like a good amount of trash
Mm-hmm.
from people. And then there is like one section where if you don't know that you're hitting the last waterfall, like it's just dry
Hmm.
for a very long time. So I did like run out of water and got to like this little stream called Muddy Fork. Um, so I would recommend if you're going counterclockwise, like and I forget the names of them, but there are like some waterfalls and like you must refill because I did not know I never read anywhere that there was like this long dry patch
Okay.
to refill at because that got like a little stressful. I was like, all right, like where is the stream?
Yeah.
And like I'm not worried because like I know where I'm going has
Yeah.
water. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
That's still like not a fun feeling.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So what what was the decision to go counterclockwise versus clockwise?
I heard the views were better.
Okay.
Which in like thinking about how I would have what I would have seen the other way, like I can understand that.
Hmm.
And then coming out of the hike counterclockwise, you're coming down a very sandy mountain, not up.
Okay.
Um, so it's harder in the beginning because you're like starting uphill of a part of a sandy mountain, but like your end is easier.
Okay.
And if you have All Trails Pro people, look at that like incline elevation and mileage because that will tell you like how you want to like end or start your hike.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then based on the campsites or the camping areas that I knew were available, like I knew which ones I wanted to go to. So it made more sense for me to go counterclockwise.
Okay. Awesome. Um, is there a lot of like elevation change on that hike?
Mm-mm.
I imagine it's like pretty kind of just like gradually undulating.
You have like a
There's no
good
drop.
initial, but then you decline. And yeah, it is just,
Yeah.
I think the net elevation is like nothing. Like
Yeah.
you think it is, but then you're also going like up and down a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
Really,
cool.
the hard part of that hike is just 40 miles.
Yeah. The length. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So having ticked off two Northwest classics in the span of 2 weeks, do you have any others on your list before
Uh,
the rainy season hits?
some nurses and I think are gonna do like a 20 miler overnighter in like a couple weeks, and then that's probably gonna be it. I have some like day hikes. I'm trying to look at my list. Day hikes on that I'm gonna go check out. I don't have it up. I don't but nothing like super big or crazy. And
Yeah.
I'm not really like a winter sports person, so I'll have to check out like snowshoeing, like where people do that.
Yeah.
But those were kind of like my big check marks for the summer.
Yeah, there's a lot of like snowshoeing and Nordic skiing near Hood for sure.
Yeah.
The White River area I know, and then just like at Meadows itself has like a Nordic track. But yeah, I would totally recommend like if you have a day in October, kind of when the leaves are changing, up on the Olympic Peninsula, like I would definitely recommend trying to get up to
Oh,
the High Divide.
yeah, like there's like actually like four of us magically have like 2 days off together. So we're thinking of doing an overnighter. So I will send that everyone's way.
Yeah, yeah, that's a solid one. Um, cool. Well, so if someone's like, wow, like this sounds really cool, I want to be able to do that, but like right now, I can hike 6 miles at like a moderate elevation change. What would like your advice be for someone who's like, I want to do the Enchantments or I want to do something like the Timberline Trail like next year? So they have like almost a full year to prepare. They're only hiking like 6 miles right now. Like, what would your advice be to that person?
My advice would be to like you just have to like put in reps and you have to like I mean, because I remember when I first started hiking, you're like 5 miles, and I was like so proud of myself. And then it was like, well, maybe I can do 6, and then maybe I can do 7, and like
Mm-hmm.
you just got to put the time in, just like with weight training, you can't jump from like 100 pounds to 150 in a back squat. Like your body needs to be able to adapt. So for me, I think like making hiking a priority and like planning it, like don't just be like, oh, I like hiking on the weekends. Like, nope, like find your hikes,
Mm-hmm.
all trails, the community, see what other people are doing, and
Mm-hmm.
like plan that. Like, okay, this week I can do a 7 miler. Maybe then the next week I can do like 8 or 9, or like instead of a moderate hike, like do a shorter hard hike. And like
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
that, like I think weightlifting like helps immensely. Like
Mm-hmm.
the leg strength, and then just like your tendons like getting stronger just from that time under tension. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, getting into weightlifting, eating enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think that, we oftentimes think of hiking as this like fun recreational thing, because it is, and it's great to be outside in nature and all of that. But like once you start looking at, wanting to go, I say 6 miles because that's like the, 2 to 3 hour-ish, like most, baseline healthy humans can do that. But once you start to get beyond that, like you are putting stressors on your joints and your tendons, and your muscles are getting more taxed, and you have to think about your fueling plan for that. And so yeah, I think, we do think of hiking as this, fun, recreational, relaxing thing. Um, but also like if you want to do, these really long epic hikes, like you do have to think about like a training plan, like just as you would like a marathon training plan or half marathon. Like you need a plan, and you need to like stick with it, and
I
ask for help, and join a hiking club, or like recruit friends or family members to do it with you. But yeah, I think really like respecting the distance and what those things entail.
Yeah, like if you really, I think what kind of changed for me was like seeing it as a part of my training and not as just like a hobby. Like I really want to be someone who can climb mountains, therefore I have to treat it as like an athletic event, and like you wouldn't just kind of go to the gym and not eat. So like
Mhm.
therefore like it does take some planning. And like if you want to do these things for like time or distance, or see what you're capable of, and it's not just like I'm gonna like go for a hike and see the forest, but like no, I want to like power through and like put some miles on. Like you have to take it just as seriously.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's fun. I mean, it's fun to, put the reps in the gym or whatever, and then go out on the weekends and slowly, see your mileage and your strength and your, everything like that increase, and, consequently your times decreasing. And
Yeah.
yeah, and like the places you can go and the places that you can see is just
Yeah, I mean,
incredible.
finishing Mount Whitney, like, standing at the top of Whitney and then finishing it, tears. And then, I did Timberline by myself. And like,
Yeah.
plenty of women are out there doing, but there's nothing really more empowering than knowing that you can carry your own 30-ish pounds and hike around a mountain. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, the physical, like, cool, I can check that off. I did it. But then just the mental aspect of it too. Like,
Oh
wow,
yeah,
like,
for
I,
sure. Yeah.
I am so capable and strong.
Yeah, yeah. And like doing hard things in the backcountry, and like pushing ourselves like that, like, really getting out of your comfort zone, and yeah, and carrying everything that you need to survive, like on your body for 3 nights, like by yourself, or three
Yeah.
days, 2 nights, whatever it is. That's like super empowering and super badass. So yeah, and then that translates into life and
Like,
nursing and
yeah,
whatever else. Like,
what else can I do? Yeah.
yep, we can do hard things. Awesome, Kelly. Well, thank you so much for sharing those with us. Those were super inspiring stories. I'm going to keep both of those hikes at the top of my list. Where can people find you other than inside of the Back of the Pack community? Where else do you exist on the interwebs?
Mostly the gram. So at kellywright.co. I do put out a weekly email. So there's a link in my bio to get that. Just like nutrition, life, like habit, sustainability, tips and like stories. I'm really big on like relatability. So I did actually in one email talk a lot about like all the research and stress I put myself under for this hike.
I read that one. It was good.
Yeah, so mostly the gram, and then that links to like my coaching and my email list, building a website. It's coming.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. I hope you have a lovely night. I'm going to stop recording now. And thanks so much for everyone for tuning in. If you have questions, drop them in the comments here or in the community, and we'll try to answer them. Bye.
Bye.